Hello everyone, my name is Rochelle Innocent and I'm the founder and CEO of Project Purpose. Welcome to our channel. Our community is focused on fostering the intellectual and character development in children. We do this through our parent-child workshops that are focused on 4 themes: autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept, in order to cultivate grit, perseverance, and resilience in each child. And we are so thrilled to be offering one of the first of its kind digital, virtual, and continuous learning environments, enabling parents and children to connect from all around the world. At Project Purpose, our overarching mandate is to renew and rebuild family, community, and relationships. Our different social media platforms provide us with an opportunity to have discussions and to create space for all topics that relate to family, community, and relationships with ourselves as well as with others, with a primary focus on mental health and education. More precisely, the ways that the institutions of mental health and education play a role and have played a role in our societies at large. These discussions and debates provide us with an opportunity to think critically about what needs to change within these structures for us to live up to our bold slogan: support, protect, and empower each child through youth-focused development, better known as leadership in juvenescence. We recognize that in valuing our children's leadership potential, this also translates as recreating and co-creating environments, both socially and politically, that will enable our children to thrive. For those of you who are particularly keen on the topic, we also write thought pieces every other Sunday. We actually have a thought piece that we just dropped this past Sunday, so definitely be sure to meander over to the website and check out our online content. Now, if it is the case that you are looking for a listening alternative, well, we're available wherever podcasts are playing, and we've provided you with access to a few links down below. Now, as is the convention, be sure to subscribe, hit that post notification bell so that you are aware of every time we post. And of course, if you like these conversations and you want to keep them going, like, comment, and share this segment. Let's get into it. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion today is mental wellness. And on the topic of mental wellness, we're doing a continuation of the video that we did earlier this week on what self-care is, and I gave 3 tidbits. There's 3 tenets to try to incorporate into your lifestyle that really do translate as feeling well and being well. And in this conversation, I want to talk about what self-care isn't. Some behaviors we might engage in with the intent or with the justification that is for our own benefit and is for the sake of the greater good, when it truly just is not. And so it will impact our well-being. It has impacted all of our well-being at some point in time, but no one has called it out for what it is, which is avoidant behavior, and also behavior that if you find yourself engaging in it a lot, gives you a better idea as to who to keep in your life and who you need to really raise some red flags about. And so without further ado, I'm going to go into my top 3 what self-care isn't. And this might be inflammatory depending on your personalities and your personal dispositions, but I stand firm. These are some tenets that I really do believe in, especially after some of the events that have taken place in my life, all the more convicted that these are case in point. And so the first one is swallowing disrespect for the greater good of harmony. And so there has been so many occasions in my life where I was the expected reaction was for me to swallow disrespect so that everyone around who would be impacted by me calling out the behavior and defending myself didn't feel uncomfortable. And oftentimes, if you're in a friend group, if you're engaging with more than 2 people that want a certain level of steady state in those relationships, whether they're platonic, whether they're familial, whether they're even with your romantic partner, if it comes time to respond and to have your feelings validated because you were confronted confronted by someone in that dynamic, in that setting, and everyone gets irritated that you called it out, they kind of just wish that you kept the peace, that tells you who those people are. That is not self-care. That is not something that helps you. It makes you feel invalidated. It hurts your sense of self-esteem. It hurts your sense of worth. It makes you normalize feelings of betrayal that come with not being defended when you should have been. And that's really what you should expect. You should always expect to be supported. Even if not everyone agrees, no one should feel angry with you for not being silent when they can tell, objectively speaking, that it was disrespectful. And so I find, especially in Canadian culture and in the culture that I grew up in, like, everyone prefers harmony over discomfort. Everyone wants you to just grin and bear it, and I am totally against that. And having been bullied growing up, it took me a while to develop my voice. And so as an adult, I was very adamant that if someone was disrespectful, I was going to speak up about it. And I wanted support. And a lot of the times, because of the culture, the person who speaks up gets alienated, right? You speaking up, you creating discomfort, you forcing people to see and to choose what to do about the situation makes them want to opt you out. And I've realized that that's not an insult. That's no longer something that hurts my feelings. If me speaking up and advocating for myself and validating my own feelings in the face of disrespect makes you feel inclined to snub me, then snub, gladly received, gladly welcomed. I would much rather create space for the kinds of friends who would gladly support me and validate me and defend me as well, right? And it took me a while to recognize that a friend who doesn't feel inclined to defend you, who prefers for you to swallow discomfort and to swallow disrespect for the sake of the greater good, is just no friend at all. And it is not self-care to engage in that behavior. So if you find yourself keeping the peace by keeping quiet when you are being disrespected, that is not self-care. That is not good for you. You say your piece and you make your choices. And if that means that you find yourself aligned to people who understand and respect your need to use your voice and who will gladly defend you, and if they don't defend you, support you still and still validate and stand by you and are loyal to you, then those are the kind of company that you want to keep. And anyone else is not company worth crying over. I've done it, not worth it. The second tenet that is not self-care, and we engage in it all the time, and again, it's because we have this victim blaming culture, is protecting the people who've hurt you. And I think that this comes from a deep-seated sense of shame being on the victim. And so me having dealt with a lot of my own inner struggle when it comes to using my voice around the people who have exploited me, who have abused me, who have harmed me, who have terrorized me, who have stalked me, because these were individuals that I knew. This didn't happen with strangers. There's a lot of inner conflict there because the expectation, the unspoken subversive expectation, is that you keep quiet. And the reason why we have whistleblowing policies, where we have, retaliation policies, is because a lot of the times it is the social network that you operate in that punishes you for not protecting the person who abused you. Everyone wants you to be quiet when it is the case that you've been abused. And of course, I don't want to use absolutes. I'm sure not everyone wants that, but enough people want that, where you feel the weight and the pressure of the ostracization when you start to speak up and speak out about the abuse that's taking place, about people who are generally seen in high regard in those settings, in those communities. And a lot of the times, it's really very unfortunate. People who have found a way to amass a certain level of prestige, of social capital, are deeply abusive behind the scenes, and they get away to play this double facade because of the community that wants to keep them there, because they represent something to that community, that the ugly parts that you're bringing to light that no one really wants to address, and they don't want to deal with it. So they protect the abuser and they ostracize the person who's being abused, which is almost doubly unfair because you're already dealing with the abusive situations, with the violence that takes place behind closed doors, but now you're dealing with an additional violence because the community of which both of you operate in wants to protect the person who's abusive. And I don't know why this seems to be the ongoing trend, where it is the abusive person that gets the support. And I think that that's probably because they get ahead of it. They build a narrative around you speaking up because they can foresee, they have a hunch about the fact that you're breaking free from their control. It could be a lot of different things, but I think that this happens frequently enough, where a lot of the times it's the community and the support network that's split between a conflict between two individuals, or a split between an issue or a dilemma, because one person is speaking up but the other person has gone ahead and discredited them. And they were able to do so because a lot of the times when someone speaks up and they speak up from a place of concern, everyone just assumes it is true. Though we recognize that abusive people who are losing control do what they can to discredit the person that they're abusing just before that person speaks up. And so I think that this is where the accountability lies in all parties, right? And it lies in all parties because because I think for the person who is being subjected to abuse, like their voice has been stolen systematically from the abuser. And so it takes so much courage to speak up. And by the time they develop the courage to speak up, they've already been discredited in so many circles without them knowing that their voice falls on deaf ears. And sometimes your voice falls on deaf ears because people have their own issues that they're dealing with. They just don't have the bandwidth to support you in your crisis. But most of the time it's because the person who's abusing that individual has gone ahead and built a narrative to discredit the person right before they speak. And so it is just the way that manipulation and control works when we aren't super careful and mindful about the information we're receiving and why we're receiving it. Like if you're receiving information about someone that you know you don't have a relationship with that person, for that person to call you and tell them themselves, or you don't have the relationship with that person for you to feel inclined to call them up and say, hey, like I heard this, are you okay? Like is everything all right? If those are not the immediate actions that you feel you have the ability to do when you are confronted with information about someone, then recognize that you probably aren't the person that is the most appropriate receiver of that information. And if you're not the most appropriate receiver of that information, then it's not being shared in goodwill. And too few of us have this reflex. Oftentimes because maybe it's gossip, maybe we want to be part of the gossip train, but we're just not super critical in the way that we think about the information that we're receiving, when the right thing to do would be to validate that information before you spread it. But if you spread it before validating it, then you're part of the problem and not part of the solution. And that behavior, protecting the abuser, and as a result of your silence, that abuse propagates within your community and it builds into a campaign against you. I mean, that is not self-care. So I think that it's really important that you let the cards fall where they lie, but you speak your truth. And whether people believe you or not is not your responsibility, but it is your responsibility to bring light to the fact that this person is abusive. And I will always be someone who will speak up and speak out against abusive, derogatory, inappropriate behavior. I don't care who believes me, who doesn't. I've said my piece, I've done my part, so that I can at least give the next person who has been targeted by these abusive individuals an opportunity to make the appropriate choices with more information than what they would have received if I hadn't spoken up. And so I think that that's my responsibility as a survivor, to always use my voice to speak up and to bring light to the abuse that takes place behind closed doors, to the insidious nature of certain people's behavior behind closed doors. And that is something I will always do in my own time, in my own way, in alignment with my own healing. But I will never be the person who protects the people who are abusive and harmful towards me or the people that I love. It's just not going to happen. And the last one, which is not self-care, but too many of us do it, is we invalidate our own feelings because no one agrees. Your feelings are your feelings, whether people agree with you or not. And they don't have to agree with you. They have to honor your feelings. They have to respect your feelings, but no one has to agree with you. But just because people don't agree with you doesn't mean your feelings aren't real and they aren't justifiable. You just need to recognize that when it comes to your feelings, you don't need approval. Your feelings are your feelings. Get support in how you manage those feelings and how you work through those feelings, but you don't need someone to yay or nay whether or not those feelings are real or not, because they're real to you, they're real for you, and that's enough. And too many of us are invalidating our feelings, which makes it very hard when we start doing that healing work to start to find that unity and that alignment with our emotions. And even me, like a lot of my emotions, I'm very cerebral about them, and I'm still filling the gap, the void that I feel exists between my cerebral way of managing through crises and my emotional way. That's because I've discredited my emotional side for so long. But I've reached that place where like I respect my feelings, I validate my own feelings, I don't need anyone else to validate them. But also because it took such a long and very, very intentional process, it's also quite painful as well, because you have to like unbury all of the feelings that you invalidated throughout the years to support in your own healing and your own growth and your own, emotional maturation. I only want to be around people who know how to validate my feelings too, right? And I don't need other people's validation. I have my own, but I also now have no threshold for my feelings being invalidated. That is not something that I have tolerance for. I tolerated it for much too long, and it is not self-care. It will eat at your spirit for people around you to gaslight you, or to never agree with your emotions, or to never try to support you, never try to comfort you. I mean, those are not not experiences that I would wish upon anyone, and I've had far too many of those. So I think that is not self-care. Being around people, allowing yourself to keep company with people who don't value your feelings, who don't see you as a whole human being that honors and supports and cherishes all of the parts of you that are you, including your emotional footprint, and making that sort of the baseline of any relationship that you would want to invest your time and energy into. So those were my 3 what self-care isn't. And like, I think for both, like whether we talk about what self-care is, what self-care isn't, when we talk about well-being, there are so many different aspects of well-being that go under the radar because we classify them as maybe, something that's more social or something that's more interrelational or intra-relational, but all of it really does line to our well-being and how good do we feel inside and out. So those are the pieces of feedback that I had for you today. Hopefully food for thought for you. Now, before letting you go, I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that we will be going live at least twice a month, every month on our website, so definitely be sure to tune in. Now, these events are paid events. You can buy your one-time ticket, get a sense as to what these events are about, and if you like it, then definitely take a look at one of our membership plans where you have access to webinars and workshops, all largely focused on self-mastery over and above the live events that we host. This is my invitation to check it out, be part of our game changer community, being part of the change that you want to see, allowing us a small role to play in your journey. We are on the road to 1K, so we do invite you to follow us across all of our social media platforms, and we look forward to chatting with all of you very soon. We'll talk to you later.